Hello and welcome to the Sky Sports Golf podcast presented by Callaway. Lots to discuss again today. It was all a bit ho-hum at Bay Hill on Sunday. Looked like Collin Morikawa was just going to stroll to victory until suddenly it all changed. We'll reflect on one of the most dramatic momentum shifts you are ever likely to see as Russell Henley got the win that his consistently excellent golf this year has deserved. Drama in Joburg too, a final round 62 from Callum Hill, which included a wild members bounce on the 72nd hole to get into a playoff before he saw off two home favourites in that playoff. We will be speaking to Callum 200 days out from the Ryder Cup. We'll have a bit of a chat about who's hot and who's not. And of course, it is Players' Championship week. We will preview the biggest event of the year so far. We, being me and my guest this week, who I'm simply going to introduce thusly, in my opinion, the nicest man in golf. Brad Faxon joins me this morning. Good morning, Fax. How are you?
Jamie, it's good to see you. You forgot that we had the time spring forward here in the U.S.
You've let the listeners into behind the curtain there. Yes, Fax now. I thought I was having this podcast an hour later with Fax, but there we go. He has joined us. I have joined him. We're all good to go. We're going to start at Bay Hill, Fax. Just an extraordinary final day. An extraordinary in the sense that I kind of only had one eye on it. I thought Collin Morikawa was just plodding along, 3-shot lead most of the day, 4-shot lead at one point, keeping everyone at arm's length, no one really making a run from the chasing pack, and then boom, it all just flipped.
There were so many things that were happening yesterday, and to have both Collin Morikawa and Russell Henley, two players that have played very, very well the last couple of years, but neither one had won in quite some time. And Morikawa had been on the doorstep. His last win was the Zozo Championship, and Open champion, PGA champion, a guy that's gotten his game back. He had played so well the first three rounds of Bay Hill. Tee to green, he was the best. His irons were back to that standard that we expected from him. Scrambling, he was incredible. And I just thought the way he was playing and how difficult the course was, nobody seemed to be making any charges. There was nobody making any birdies. And the last few holes, except for the 16th hole, the shorter par 5, it was really, really difficult. And all of a sudden, Russell Henley, 2-shot swing on the 14th hole, this 6-iron par 3, 200 yards, which was the number one most difficult hole on the golf course on Sunday. He hits a beautiful approach. Collin misses the green barely, hits a poor chip, and there's a 2-shot swing. And all of a sudden, a 1-shot lead with some drama on those closing holes.
Yeah, I mean, it was extraordinary. As you said, 3 shots back as they walked onto the 14th green. He birdies, Morikawa bogeys, the gap suddenly won, and then that chip in on the 16th, which was that must have just taken the wind out of Collin Morikawa's sails. Have you ever experienced something like that yourself, where you are totally in control of a tournament and then it just slips between your fingers, or indeed vice versa?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about golf. When you start coming down the stretch and everybody is so nervous, I think the players obviously are nervous. The caddies are nervous, and 16 was the easiest hole on the golf course. It's a beautiful par 5, even though it plays short sometimes. There was very, very little wind the entire week at Bay Hill, except for on Thursday, the first round. And Morikawa hits his drive into that right fairway bunker, which he had done 4 consecutive rounds. And Henley hit a beautiful shot, and Morikawa forced to lay up on a hole that everybody's reaching with mid-irons. And Henley, from the middle of the fairway, hits a really poor iron shot. And you're just thinking, well, he's too nervous. He hasn't smiled. He looks like he's sucking for air. And he hits it well to the right, chipping across the green towards the water. And the rough at Bay Hill, you can't imagine how thick it was. Morikawa hits a nice approach for his third. And when Russell hits this pitch shot, it really was moving pretty quickly.
Oh, it was going like a train.
Yeah, no way this ball was going to stay on the green. It hit dead center, flush in the middle of the flagstick, and crashes into the hole. And it was really the first drama of the afternoon, what we needed really to do the telecast. And all of a sudden, we had a ball game.
Take us into the mindset of a professional golfer. Have you ever had a situation like that where, okay, I've got this tournament, it's in the bag, I'm in complete control here, and then suddenly something just happens, you're like, uh-oh. What was Collin Morikawa feeling at that moment?
Yeah, I think he was cruising. He was hitting a lot of fairways. He was having putts just snuggle up close to the hole, and when Colin Morikawa hits fairways, he's not missing the greens often with his irons, but he wasn't holding a lot of putts on Saturday's round. He had putted beautifully the first two rounds, and you were just kind of waiting to see if there was going to be anybody that could do anything like this. And he hit that approach shot on the par 3 14th that missed the green, came down into an awkward sort of pitch shot, didn't really catch the pitch shot perfectly, and you thought, oh my gosh, now we got something to go. And one of our walking scorers had said he really doesn't play shots well from the rough. And we didn't really know that because he hadn't missed any fairways. It was kind of the boring golf, that steady golf that wins so many tournaments. And I think every player that's played and gotten into the thick of it has had things that upend you, that whether it's a poor shot by yourself or a miraculous shot like Henley hit on 16, really when you're not expecting it. This kind of came out of the blue. Henley, who I think he learned a lot this past fall at the President's Cup in Montreal. He was Scottie Scheffler's partner in the matches, in the four balls and the four sums. And, for Scottie to pick him, to say, I want him to be my partner, that was a huge, huge boost of confidence. And yesterday on the practice putting green in the morning with Rory, before he was getting ready to go play his final round, he had played with Henley in the third round, and he paid him a really big compliment and said, this guy really plays tough courses well. And Jamie, we saw it a little bit last year at Troon in the Open. Russell was in one of the last few groups in that horrible weather on Sunday, and he just kept hanging right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it must have felt for Colin Morikawa just like it had been stolen from his grasp. And you could see that even Russell Henley himself was slightly shocked when he spoke to Cara.
I feel like I can't breathe right now. It's just so hard and so difficult around this place. And, got a good break there. I holed another one yesterday on the first hole from the bunker and had a couple hole outs from off the green this week. But I just tried to stay really tough this week, and really felt like I was making a lot of mistakes today. The front nine and bogeyed 2 of the par 5s, which was tough. And I just tried to hang tough and keep committing to every shot. And, this game is just so hard, and that was unbelievably difficult. Hats off to Colin. He played great today. He played super steady, and sometimes golf is just mean like that. But what a great competitor he is. But it means so much. I've watched Tiger make a lot of putts on this green. I've watched Rory and Fran and guys make putts to win here, and Bryson, and it's just cool to know that I did it too.
Fax, he's not particularly flashy, Russell Henley. He's not a big name, but my goodness, is he effective, and he's playing the best golf of his life at the moment.
He really is. He's one of the players that doesn't win with power. He wins a little bit with guts and guile, workmanlike around the golf course. He doesn't seem to be afraid, although he said, to Carr, that I was so nervous I didn't feel comfortable. And when he chipped it in on 16, you expect a big smile, a big fist bump from someone who felt like that. But he did a nice job at keeping his emotions in check, because there's no two harder finishing holes, and really more well-known finishing holes, than 17 and 18 at Bay Hill.
But Russell Henley, would you say at the moment that he's a shoe-in for that Ryder Cup team?
I would find it hard to say shoe-in. The way the American team selects their side is 6 automatic picks. I think you want players that have played well for a long stretch of time, and that tend to be peaking towards the end of the season. So it doesn't look like there's anything that can slow him down. His partnership, like I said, with Scheffler at the President's Cup would make Scottie be able to lean on Keegan and show, hey, look, this guy's won big tournaments now. He's a guy that we can play in either format. The guy's good in foursomes because he can hit the fairways. He's a very, very good putter, which you need in Ryder Cup. And I think when you can see a guy that can keep his emotions in check at a place that could be pretty hostile and uncontrollable at Bethpage on Long Island, we've seen that what the fans are like there. And Keegan, having gone to college not far away from there at St. John's University, I think it's going to be one of the most exciting events that we'll see in our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see this, incidentally. $4 million Russell Henley won yesterday by winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Arnold Palmer's career earnings, $3.6 million. It's fair to say that the game has changed a little bit, Fax.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was lucky enough. My rookie year on tour was 1984. I was 22 years old, and at this Players Championship, I got paired with Arnold Palmer in my final round. And I remember back then we had rotary phones. You had to call someone at the front desk to ask what time you played the next day. And when the woman told me I was playing at 10:40 with Arnold Palmer, I almost couldn't believe it. I couldn't sleep. And Peter Jacobsen was our third, and we were kind of in the mid part of the tournament, so we weren't really in contention. But Arnold obviously generated huge crowds, and even that morning was packed on the first tee, and I couldn't have been more excited. And we all parred the first hole, and we walked off the first tee to walk back to the second green. And Arnold Palmer certainly had no idea who I was, but he put his arm around me. 55 years old, and he had won the week previously on the senior tour. And he said, "Son, do you want to have a long career out here?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, Mr. Palmer, I'd love to have a long career." And he said, "Well, listen, don't look down at your feet like these young guys do. Look people in the eye. They're the reason why you have a job, why you get a paycheck, and think about them when you play, not just yourself." And I said, well, it was a wow moment for me. It was a defining moment. And, Peter Jacobsen, who was already on the tour for, 6 or 7 years previous to that, was a guy that I think he was bigger off the course than he was on the course, like Arnold was, which is hard to imagine, having won, 7 major championships, 4 Masters. And I always remembered what he said about how to treat people, how to, your experience on the course is important, but off the course is just as important. And, it makes me think of Rory and what he does and how he treats people as well. But I mean, to have played with Arnold that early in my career, and now being able to call an event like the Arnold Palmer Invitational at his home course, it's pinch yourself stuff.
Some other talking points from Bay Hill, Fax, and we've mentioned Colin Morikawa. That winless streak continues. As you say, that Zozo 17 months ago remains his last win. It's easy to say this. It's very hard to win in the PGA Tour. We know that. But should he be winning more?
Jeez. You think with his pedigree and what he's done that yes, but I think he's at this age where he's in a, same as Scottie Scheffler, 28 years old. He's on an uptick. He had left his longtime coach about a year and a half or 2 years ago, Rick Sessinghaus, and tried to find a way to get better. Maybe this fade that I play, maybe getting some more speed would help. He went on to search for some instructors help him with just his short game around the green, which was maybe average. And then he went back to his coach. They said, "Look, we can win this way. We don't have to be the longest player. Let's just do what we do well." And, when you taste it like this, I think the best in the world, they find ways to make that, give them more incentive to play well. And I see Colin doing so many good things that I'm not really worried about him not winning. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to make the Ryder Cup team. I think he's a player that his teammates will like to have, again, a guy that can play either format. He can make a lot of birdies. Should he have won? I don't know. I think Russell stole it. That was a shot. If that putt just doesn't hit the flagstick, they both make pars, and Morikawa could easily won. But I think that's what we love and hate about golf at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Look, and you mentioned the Ryder Cup. Keegan Bradley with a final round 64, went out in 29 shots, which is a record around Bay Hill, set an early clubhouse lead, eventually finishing in a tie for 5th. Fax, I'm not even going to ask you, is he one of the best 12 American golfers at the moment? Because the fact is, he is one of the best 12 American golfers at the moment. Have they got a bit of a dilemma on their hands here? And do they almost need to say, now, look, Keegan Bradley is eligible to make the Ryder Cup team, or no, he's going to be captain, and that's that? Because you cannot, in this day and age, be a playing captain. It's as simple as that.
It seems like that would be impossible. One of the things that Keegan Bradley did say this week that I thought was very interesting, and he's been very consistent too at this, Jamie. He said, "Look, if I finish in the top 6, I'm going to play. If I don't finish in the top 6, I'm not going to consider playing. But he said, I do have a lot of great vice captains. So in my mind, that makes me think like he wants to make this team. He can let all the other captains make some of the bigger decisions and play. And I think if you go back, to 2 years ago, Keegan Bradley did get snubbed from potentially making the team. We saw that on the Full Swing Netflix series, and how devastating that was to have those cameras in his face when Captain Zach Johnson had to tell him he wasn't going to pick him to make the team. And Keegan Bradley's an extraordinary driver of the golf ball and has that fade, that nice way to draw the ball. He hits it high. He wasn't in the sort of clique of players that seem to be always getting picked, the same guys, the same assistant captains. And I think a lot of people, including Keegan, were very, very surprised when he got chosen to be the captain at his age, at 38 years old. That's young in the way the PGA of America had been in the past. There was always that kind of 45 to 50-year-old window. And I think a couple things happened. He was, I think Tiger was offered a chance to be the captain, and surprisingly declined. I thought he would have loved to do that with Phil Mickelson's departure to live and blowing his chance to be the captain. He might have been a good one to have, particularly in New York, as popular a golfer as he was. So Keegan, maybe the Netflix series helped him to get picked. And when he even got the phone call from Seth Waugh, who was then the PGA of America's president or CEO, he didn't know it was coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming.
No, completely out of the blue, yeah.
All these players, Jamie, when you're playing at the top of the game, you have an ego. You better have an ego. And maybe you don't show it like Russell Henley doesn't show it, but he's confident as a golfer. And when you get to that age, the Ryder Cup to someone like Keegan Bradley means as much as anything. And he's played well for a long time and still one of the best drivers of the golf ball out there, tee to green. He can hang with anyone, and his putting is improved. I think he kind of wants to show the world, the public, especially the American public, hey, I'm still good enough. I don't want to be put out to pasture being a captain. And usually, don't you think that our captains, they're way past their prime? And I'd love to see him be a playing captain. I don't know what that would do for his game, but it's a huge story.
Well, look, and they don't become much more passionate than Keegan Bradley. He wears his heart in his sleeve. The Ryder Cup means so much to him. I'm going to say it now. I mark the date, March the 10th. Keegan Bradley is going to play on the Ryder Cup team, and Webb Simpson is going to captain the US. That is my bold prediction. I'm going to stick with it. We'll see what happens. Just one other bit of business from Bay Hill. Corey Connors with an extraordinary round yesterday. 17 pars, just the one birdie. Hold a 12-foot par putt at the 18th, which secured his place at the Open at Royal Portrush. We've mentioned it plenty. Ryder Cup watch, 200 days to go until, as Fax says, what is going to be an extraordinary atmosphere, the bear pit of Bethpage. And from a European point of view, another very strong showing at Bay Hill from Sepp Straka. He finished in a tie for 5th. Shane Lowry, Justin Rose, both with top 10 finishes. Aaron Rai, Tommy Fleetwood, Bob McIntyre, Rory McIlroy, Ludwig Oberg, Matt Fitzpatrick, all inside the top 22. On the flip side, Fax, another missed cut for Victor Hovland. Should we be concerned about Victor Hovland?
100%. I watched Victor on the second hole in the practice round as I was touring the golf course prior to the start of the event, and he was with a coach I'd never seen before, another coach making some rehearsals on his swing that looked like they might be difficult to do. And boy, I can't believe that he's doing this. And when this search for perfection is incredible what it does to golfers. And he's been the envy of so many players, at this ability to just hit repeatedly perfect looking fades down the middle. How good he was in Rome, that chip in on the first hole, and this path. When you go down this path, it's sometimes it's hard to get out of it, and somebody's got to kind of come aside him and say, Victor, what are you doing? You've had one of the best strings. You've been one of the best ball strikers. And hopefully he finds something that he can hang on to. He's had an on and off relationship with a coach called Joe Mayo. Joe Mayo has helped him with his full swing, particularly his short game, where he was poor at best, and he got to be where he was a little bit more confident. He's always been a very good putter. And, Luke Donald did an extraordinary job in Italy. And I love the fact that the European side has elected him to be captain again over here. He was prepared for every single moment, and he keeps his emotions in check. I know that the players loved him as a captain. Rory loved him as a captain, and I think he's going to be able to manage the hostility they're going to see, the difference that it's going to be to come back to the U.S. for the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, we wait to see what happens there. Rory himself, a little bit wayward with the driver yesterday, but Fax, you spent a bit of time with him at Bay Hill last week. He seems mentally in a pretty good place, Rory, and the game is obviously pretty good as well, even if yesterday wasn't his very best stuff.
Well, that was interesting. This past week at Bay Hill for Rory, he's only played 2 PGA Tour events prior to Bay Hill this year. He's won, and he had a decent finish showing. I think he was tied for 11th at the Genesis on a very difficult course as well. But he started the week here at Bay Hill with some newer modeled TaylorMade woods, the driver 3-wood and 5-wood, and put a 3-iron in his bag and took one of his 4 wedges out. But on Sunday morning, he had his older set that he'd used to win at AT&T. He had them Ubered from his house Saturday night, which is pretty extraordinary to have those shipped up. It's about a 2.5-hour drive. And he came back with his clubs that he's, I think, a little bit more comfortable with, that he will use this week at the Players' Championship. Those clubs have slightly more spin for him. As we know, Rory doesn't need more speed. You need a little bit more control, and particularly at a course like the Players' Championship. And what I saw about Rory at Bay Hill was his draw looks like it's back. There's nothing prettier in golf than seeing Rory hammer a draw down a fairway or into a green. And his putting numbers after round 1 got very good again. So I love his confidence on the greens, around the greens. He's chipped very well. And, finding fairways at the Players is essential because the rough is going to be thick like it was at Bay Hill. And these greens at the Players' Championship, this notoriously difficult Pete Dye, these greens are small, and your iron game has to be precise. And I think what Rory did, the way he played at Pebble Beach, that has the smallest greens on the PGA Tour, can bode well for him this week at the Players.
Yeah, and he's saying he's feeling confident with his wedges, which, for the last couple of years have been arguably his Achilles heel, so that's reassuring to hear. As things stand, he isn't playing any events between the Players and the Masters. He has 3 weeks off, but he's sort of alluding to the fact that he feels he needs to play a tournament between those two.
Yeah, I think he might sneak in one of those events. There's a tournament in Houston that's 2 weeks before the Masters. It's a course that I've told him would suit his game. It's wide off the tee. It's a longer course, and they do it. I think that what the Houston Open has done very well is they've set the course up very similar to Augusta National. With they have fairways that are generous, a shorter rough that's not very penal, but the same rough. It's the same similar grasses, and it's actually a very good golf course for him to play. So I think you'll see him throw that in his schedule. You don't really want to take 3 weeks off prior to the Masters.
No, and we all want to see Rory slip into that green jacket, don't we? Just to wrap up events elsewhere, the Puerto Rico Open was an opposite field event. 23-year-old Australian Carl Phillips won in just his 3rd PGA Tour start as a member, 66-64 at the weekend. That'll get it done. He was still in college a year ago at Stanford, same college as Tiger Woods, earned a PGA Tour card in a relatively brief stint on the Corn Ferry Tour, and is now a PGA Tour winner, and he will get the last spot in the field for the Players this week. Rasmus Nergaard Peterson, by the way, runner-up there, an outsider at the moment, but maybe a late bolter for the European Ryder Cup team, so good to see him playing well. Japan's Ryo Takeda was the winner of the Blue Bay LPGA in China, a stunning final round 64 to win by 6 shots from Minjee Lee, just 21 years of age, already a 2-time LPGA Tour winner now. And Sergio Garcia won Live Hong Kong. After his win, he said he hopes it boosts his Ryder Cup chances. He has taken up DP World Tour membership again and settled his fines. Can you see any scenario, Fax, where Luke Donald picks him for Bethpage? Because he's not going to qualify. He's only in one major. But can you see Luke Donald picking him realistically?
Geez, that's a really good question for Sergio to get picked, in my opinion. And he does have history, of course, at Bethpage when he was re-gripping the club and the fans were counting all the waggles. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. And he still hit it good down the middle as he was going up against Tiger. I don't think so, in my opinion. He would have to somehow play well in the Masters, get exempt into all the major championships, and showed Luke Donald that he's serious. It would be an incredible story if Sergio did make that team, and the spirit that he brings is similar to what Seve and Jose brought as well. But it's been a while since he's played with the guys that are now the best players on the European Tour.
Well, one other piece of news from the world of golf to discuss as well, staying with the live theme, that was Bryson DeChambeau quashing rumours last week that he wasn't going to be renewing his live contract in the hopes of making a PGA Tour return. I suppose, Fax, while reunification talks are ongoing and the future is still so uncertain, we shouldn't be hugely surprised by that news, but those initial contracts are all coming up for renewal soon. Persistent rumours that Brooks Koepka, for example, is done with live and wants to come back too, so it's a kind of watch this space with all these guys, isn't it?
It really is. This whole conversation of if the right word is reunification of the game has been annoying now, isn't it? It's got to the point where you're just kind of shaking your head because every time you think there might be some sort of optimism, it gets squashed. And I know in the last discussions with Jay Monahan and Yasser and even President Trump and Adam Scott, it seemed like there might be a solution, and now I really feel now, Jamie, that it's never been farther away, and really? what that bodes for the future. Both sides were upset. I don't think they left the room in good spirits. We saw Monahan's presser last week at Bay Hill and his interview with Eamon Lynch, and he's always positive, but again, you don't hear much from what's going to happen. And I think the PGA Tour now has some leverage. Certainly they don't have the amount of money that the PIF does, that they, so how they support the Live Tour. But the ratings for the PGA Tour have been good the last few weeks. The strength of field has been very good, but it hurts not having these top players like Jon Rahm, like Bryson, like Brooks, and, so many others, like Sergio, like Joaquin Niemann. How do you not want to see these guys play? And you might have said, hey, a simple solution is, Jay, just invite several players to play at the Players' Championship. But, I think he might die on the cross when he first said you'll never play in a PGA Tour event again if you go to the Live Tour. I don't know how this ends.
Well, we wait to see. We keep talking about it all the time, and you're right. It seems like we're going around in circles. We're going to take a quick break there. When we come back, we will be joined by the winner of the Joburg Open in dramatic fashion yesterday, Callum Hill, and we'll be looking ahead to the biggest event of the season so far, the Players, TPC Sawgrass, the iconic Island Green 17th, and all that jazz. Welcome back to the Sky Sports Golf Podcast presented by Callaway. Brad Faxon is still with me, and we have been joined by the winner of the Joburg Open. He started the final day 8 shots back, went out in 31, came back in 31, and that is only half the story. It is morning with Fax in Florida. It's lunchtime here at Sky HQ, and it is already early evening in Dubai, where that champion is. Callum Hill, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
You feeling a little bit bleary-eyed, a bit tired after yesterday?
Definitely a bit tired, yeah. It took a lot out of me yesterday and then didn't sleep too well through the night. But happy to be the last one standing at the end of all that.
Good man. Listen, it was great to watch yesterday. When you start a final round 8 shots back, what are you thinking?
Try and pick up 8 shots. And then hopefully the leader doesn't go too far away. Honestly, I thought Sean would, he's a fantastic player and a phenomenal putter. So there was no real anticipation that he wasn't going to run away with the trophy, but you just pick up as many shots as you can and see where you are coming into the back nine. Hopefully you've got half a chance.
Was there a point in the back nine when you kind of thought, "Oh, do you know what? I could be in with a sniff here. If I post a target, it could have a chance."
I think we were making the turn, or maybe like 11 or 12. But I got to 11 under through 11 holes, I think, total. And Sean hadn't moved any further away from us. He was still at 13 or 14 under, either one over par or level. So we're only within a couple shots with, say, 7 holes left. So at that point, I thought we might have a sniff at it. And then I made a little run myself for over the next few holes, which got me level through, I think it was my 15th hole.
I'd love to ask a question. You get off to a start like you did, and we've had some funny things happen over here the last couple of weeks on the PGA Tour. Joe Highsmith made the cut on the number at the Cognizant Classic, shot 64-64 on the weekend to win. And he said, even starting his final round, thinking of winning never really entered his mind until the middle of the round. Rory McIlroy on the practice putting green yesterday before his round said, I think if I can get off to a quick start and shoot 4 under par on the front nine, I could give a run to Morikawa. And we even saw Keegan Bradley get off to that incredible start, shot 7 under on his first 9 at Bay Hill, which had never been done before, shooting in the 20s. When did you start to look at the leaderboard and go, oh my gosh, I'm there?
Honestly, in Joburg, there weren't too many around. The last one I think I saw was maybe at the turn until I got to 15 green. So during that point, Dylan Fratelli, who was also in my group, was flying. He was a couple shots ahead of me all day. I think he got to 8 under par in his round through 13 holes. So I was just trying to keep up with him. And then I managed to birdie 13, 14, and 15. And he bogeyed 15, and that's when I jumped him. So I was like, oh, I'll be somewhere in about it. And then the leaderboard comes up after we were on 16. So I actually didn't have any clue on my position until about 17 tee shot. And then I knew I was in the mix then. And you just kind of keep the foot down.
All right, so how'd you hit that tee shot on 17, Shane? You got to ask him. He sees the leaderboard. You're in the lead. What'd that feel like? Was that different than a few holes earlier?
I think because I just 3-putted 16, I hit a little too far and had a 60-footer. I actually lipped out the 60-footer and misread the 5-6-footer coming back. So I was a bit bummed at that. And then getting onto 17 tee, seeing that after I hit my tee shot, that Dylan and I were tied for the lead because Sean had made a double on 11. And that was like a let's go moment with Mike and me just trying to, we need to go for birdie and we've got this thing.
Callum, as you know, as Fax knows, as even us amateur hackers who've played the game know, you need a little bit of luck every now and then. An outrageous members bounce at the 72nd hole. You must have been delighted to see that one toppling back down towards the flag.
Yeah. I don't know if the camera does it justice, but it would be impossible for the ball to stay there. What's interesting this week is the greens have firmed up, but it's been so wet in South Africa the last 2 weeks in Durban and Johannesburg that the surrounding areas, the fringes and fairways, we've played lift, clean, and place the entire time because the ball's plugging everywhere. So there's actually more of a chance that it would potentially plug on the bank, but it is it must be like an 8% slope. Like it's a huge slope, so it was always going to kick off it. I was just happy that it was the right distance and it was going right towards the flag. There was a big screen, next to the green, and we could see it went to like 4 or 5 feet. So I was very happy with how that ended up because it was a push. I was not aiming for that slope.
And I have to ask you then, what's in your head? You had the honour in the playoff. You're standing on that tee for the first playoff hole. You've got these 2 man-mountain South Africans on home soil standing next to you. What's going through your head at that moment?
I'd say there's very little support for me in that crowd out there. There's definitely, I had my wife was there and a few of the Scots and friends from tour were there, but other than that, the rest of the fan base is definitely for the South Africans. I had the first honour, so I knew if I just hit a nice tee shot, then you've put yourself out there. They then have to follow that up. So I hit a really good tee shot in the opening kind of 5-wood drawn it around the corner. However, everyone did in the first set of it. So you're just trying to make birdie. The difficult part is that the top of that green is really firm. So everyone actually pitched it within maybe 10 feet of the hole and everyone went over the back. So nobody had an advantage. We're all just trying to putt or chip in from the fringe to try and advance to the first playoff hole.
And then when it got to the second playoff hole, I imagine players always dream of holing a winning putt and being able to fist pump that sort of release of emotion. When you're in a playoff and the other guy misses a relatively short putt, is it a bit anticlimactic? Do you feel sort of denied that moment?
I was very annoyed I left my chip short in the first playoff hole, and then I had a 20-footer from the fringe in the second one and left that 2 inches short as well.
Oh, it's
And I was so
tracking beautifully, that. Yeah.
it was right. I was so frustrated that I left it short because you need to give yourself a chance. Like, you're anticipating winning those things with a birdie, never with a par. So when Jax had that 5-footer coming back, there was not a point in where I ever thought he was going to miss that. You're just thinking about the next hole and how you get it closer to that cup to try and make a birdie. So yeah, it probably took 10, 20 seconds for me to click in that it was actually over. And then when people start throwing water on you, you kind of get that idea.
That's incredible. Have you had enough time yet to digest what this win means, how your schedule changes going forward?
Yeah, I think Mike would love if it changed a little bit because we go often to the absurd Asian countries now. But for me, it's not going to change anything. We'll do the same events, and hopefully this can carry some momentum into them and push me up some world rankings. It'd be great if I could carry this forward for a few weeks and potentially get into the PGA. I'm slightly outside at the minute at 160th. I know you need to be close to the top 100 to get that, but another couple good weeks prior to that would be putting me there or thereabouts. So short-term goals that, and then obviously we have our PGA Tour cards at the end of the year, and this is bumped me up into a position where I'm not chasing it anymore. I'm in a position that if I continue to play well, then I'll be right there. So both those things are great.
And what surprised me, Callum, is you've never played in an Open Championship before as well. So Royal Portrush this summer must be a huge target as well.
I'm so sad that last week was the 3 open spots and this week was nothing. However, the race to the buy position now, there is I think it's the top 20 at a certain point getting to the Open at Portrush. I would be ecstatic to play in that one there. Bob, obviously I spoke to him a lot when he did well a couple of years ago there, and he said it was the best Open he's ever attended or played in. So yeah, I'd be delighted to get an opportunity to play that one.
Yeah, you probably want to try and play a practice round with Shane Lowry if you can, and just keep watching Lowry celebrations.
Yeah. I tell you what, look, if Callum can beat 2 South Africans in a playoff on South African soil, then being alongside Shane and Rory at Royal Portrush would probably be quite a similar experience, I imagine, in terms of the home support. How quickly did the thunderstorms arrive yesterday after that Adolf fit wrapped up? By the way,
if it was a normal tournament, we would have not played the first playoff hole, and then the second playoff hole, the lightning was like within 200 yards, and then by the time we're at the green, the lightning's within 100 yards. Like, it is so close. The thunder is crackling right above our head. I don't know if you could ever hear it on the broadcast, but Jack's putting and it is just like erupting above us. So
really,
I don't know if he heard it or if it put him off. It was so loud, and there's just flashes within 100.
You couldn't hear that, but I could hear you were quite keen to wrap up your post-round interview fairly sharpish.
I honestly think they probably would have had to come back. I think they weren't going to stop it, so it would have had to be, or no, they were going to stop it, so it would have had to be on a Monday, I think, if it wasn't to let up. So yeah, fortunate that it did end there.
Look, Callum, congratulations. Thank you so much for your time. Just before we let you go, because you've got the media rounds to do this evening, we're about to look ahead to the Players' Championship. I'm sure a championship that you're keen to play in one year. How much would that 3-hole closing stretch at Sawgrass give you the heebie-jeebies, do you think?
Yeah, I've watched a little bit over time. Keep thinking about Justin Thomas's snap hook that he plays off the last hole and gets it down there. And 17 seems so simple. My manager's claimed a birdie on that hole, so it can't be that hard. But I'm sure when you're in
I've seen footage of Stottie's birdie in that hole as well. I mean, I think he's showing that to everybody down the years.
Yeah. But obviously it's completely different when you're in the environment of the tournament. Yeah, it's definitely treacherous. You got to have your wits about you and hit some good golf shots coming down the stretch.
Jamie, when I was trying to get my PGA Tour card, the qualifying was 6 rounds at Sawgrass at the TPC. It was the most stressful week of my life, having to go through that and hit those shots down the stretch. And when you're teeing off on that 18th hole, really for your life, you think about what's going on with anything that can happen on that closing stretch. Callum, I know you'll be there at some point, and you don't know what nerves is until you step on those last 3 holes.
I just can't imagine 6 rounds there. I imagine if you're 1 over par for the last 3, you're gaining on the field every round.
Definitely. Yeah, because you hit it in the water on the 17th hole, then you have to re-tee it up, and then 18, your impulse was like, if I don't want to hit the water, so you block it out to the right, and then you're chipping towards the water. Water's still there on your 3rd shot. It's
Disaster.
18 is the one for me. I think until you're there and you see it in the flesh, 18 is the one for me. That tee shot must be absolutely terrifying. So, anyway, Callum, you will get to experience it one year, I'm sure, no doubt. Keep up the excellent golf. Congratulations again on yesterday. And I'm glad that you escaped Joe Berg before the lightning struck. Well done.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers, Callum. All the best. Okay, we are going to move on now, Fax, and look ahead to the biggest week of the year so far. I have to say, a very strange feeling for me not to be there in Ponte Vedra Beach this year. The first time in a long time for me.
I was going to ask
and
you,
it
you're not
really
coming?
is. Yeah, I'm not coming, unfortunately, but it really is one of the special weeks, Fax. It does feel like a major championship. It has that feel about it being on the grounds there.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. And I think really what makes me the most excited about the Players' Championship, whether it was as being on the playing side, now on the media side with NBC, the strength of the field, arguably the best tournament players will face at their home. And they've done extraordinary things with the clubhouse. The practice facility now is as good as the players will see, or they can practice, on both sides of the driving range, incredible short game areas, chipping and putting greens. And they, like the Masters, to have this in the same place every single year and now move back to March. I think that's that's made, so now it's the first of what are these biggest events. A month ago to the Masters, after that, then the USPGA with the US, and then the Open Championships, all months apart in this great stretch. And players know what to expect. I think that, weather always makes a difference in March, where winds can come up and the temperatures can be cooler. It looks like it's going to be decent weather there for the week. There's a little rain right now, but all the players that live in Ponte Vedra Beach that have played there have been saying it's in the best shape they've seen it prior to a tournament. They've done something to bring back what was an original tree on the 6th tee. I don't know if you've seen it, the shorter par 4. There was always this big tree branch that kind of crept over into the player's vision. So you actually had to tee off and hit the shot lower than a lot of players would like. And they found a tree in the forest, moved it into position. And I think it's going to be extraordinary to see how the players now deal with that tee shot, because there's water left, there's trees right now. You have to hit the shot a little bit lower. That'll definitely get in the players' heads.
And look, Fax, you know as well as I do, these professional golfers can be right divas, and there's a lot of golf courses they don't particularly like, but TPC Sawgrass is, generally speaking, one of the courses that they do like. Why is that the case?
I think there's variety there. There's not one type of player that is dominant. You can be the longest hitter in the world, and that maybe doesn't give you an advantage. You can be a short, steady player like a Russell Henley or Colin Morikawa and still have a chance. The par 5s are all reachable in the right conditions for the entire field, but if you miss, particularly the second shots, you can get in all kinds of trouble around the greens. Usually you're rewarded there from hitting the ball into the fairway, and you can't go crazy low from the rough. It's thick enough that it always brings options. There's chances for weather to change the wind directions, so shots become different each day. I don't know. And you just mentioned it to Callum about those last 3 holes. They always provide drama. That 16th hole is a reachable par 5 that it's almost like a double dog leg. You have to draw your tee shot off the tee, and then it's kind of a fade second shot with all that water on the right and behind the green. The infamous 17th hole that the players, when they get to the 16th fairway, you can kind of see what the
looking
players
across
are doing, and you always see them looking across, and the wind is confounding there with all the corporate hospitality suites that are all around that green. The memories players have from watching other players, the hole-in-ones, the disasters that happen. And then, like you said, I think the 18th tee shot is the scariest tee shot in golf. Yeah. And when it means so much, the exemptions you get, the money you get, the FedEx points you get, the world ranking points you get, there's so much the Players' Championship has to offer.
Oh, I love it. It's fantastic. And I'm so sad I'm not there this year. Scottie Scheffler aiming for a three-peat. We haven't seen the very best of Scottie so far this season. And look, it is hard to follow a year like last year, I suppose. But is it close, do you think, with Scottie?
I do. He drove the ball spectacularly well last week. He hadn't driven it well early in the season. We all know that he had to have a little time off because of the incident in the kitchen with the knife and the ravioli. But he seems to be getting on form. He hit the ball well with his irons last week. He's a I don't know how you can say this. He's an underrated scrambler, even though you always think of how good he is tee to green. And for him, like a lot of players, it's can you keep holding the putts you need to? He's made huge improvements from Bay Hill last year with the putting changes, the work he's done with the extraordinary putting coach, Phil Kenyon. And I think for Scottie, if he does get off to a fast start, get some confident with the short stick right away, he'll be the man to beat. Personally, I think that, you haven't seen the best of Xander Schauffele yet with his injury as well. He's hurt his rib cage. This last week at Bay Hill was only the second time that he's played since the start of the week in Hawaii. He kept that extraordinary cut streak of, I think, 58 cuts in a row going. Will we see his best? Rory, you think that this is a place that he can win with his game. I like what he did with his putter last week at Bay Hill. And, Ludwig Oberg, he moved there about 6 months ago. He's part of the community, 4 in the world. He said it's one of his top 5 favorite courses he's ever played. So can a European, a different European come out and win this event as well? He might be one.
Well, you just see, I was saying this in the podcast a few weeks ago, for Ludwig, he's now seeing all of these courses a second time. Last year was his rookie year, so you think with 4 rounds there under his belt, he's got to have a chance. But look, you mentioned Scheffler, McIlroy and Schauffele, the current world numbers 1, 2 and 3. They're all paired together for those first 2 rounds. Is that something you like? Do you like them pairing the 1, 2 and 3 together?
I think the world loves to see that. And, Rory jumped over Schauffele to move back to second in the world. And, because Schauffele hasn't played much and Rory's win it at Pebble Beach. I kind of like to see them spread out, honestly, throughout the week so that you can watch different groups. And I don't know if these 3 guys want all this attention right away. It makes for a long week emotionally to play with those guys. But I mean, they're big boys, aren't they? When they get on that first tee on Thursday, I don't think they really care who they're playing with. The focus will be on them. It's like the entire gallery will follow those groups the first 2 days. TV is going to show every shot, every step, every player takes. And what I hate to see those guys take away from the rest of the players. Other players are going to get off to quick starts there. The scores generally are pretty low unless there's extraordinary wins or conditions. But I'd rather see those guys play together the final round than the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they would as well. And look, you're right. All the galleries will want to follow those 3. If a certain Tiger Woods had been in the field, that might have been a different story. Tiger not playing, saying his heart's not really into practicing at the moment, which I think we all can completely understand. I don't think it was a real surprise when Tiger withdrew, was it?
No, there's always hope. Tiger's done so much for the game with his incredible career. I would think he's still dreaming now while he's at home of another chance for contention in the Masters, maybe in one of the other major championships. But when he's played, like with his son Charlie, who actually lives in my neighborhood here where I live at Old Palm Golf Club, I see them practicing together. It's the scoring knack, that kind of goes away when you don't play competitive golf all the time. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Xander and Scottie, because of the little injuries they've had, those nagging injuries can take away from that. And Tiger, it's as good as he is, as good as he was, I don't know that you can just get yourself into contention. And I know he doesn't want to be a celebratory player, does he? No. He doesn't want to do it just to make people smile.
Well, we do hope to see him at Augusta, obviously, and hopefully continue his extraordinary record of making the cut at the Masters. Look, it is one of those courses, TPC Sawgrass, which gives everyone a chance, but a second shot golf course, you'd have to say, which favours those elite ball strikers, and Dame Laura Davies is tipping a man who certainly fits that description to finally get a W stateside.
Well, there's some obvious choices. Scheffler going for a three-peat, McIlroy just nearly good. But I'm going to go with Tommy Fleetwood. He's striking it great as usual, and he just needs a really good week on the greens. We know how good those greens are. So I'll go Tommy Fleetwood. It's a bit of a hard choice, but he is playing the golf. He can back it up.
Yeah, well, it would be fantastic if Tommy could get that first win on US soil. We wait to see. This week in the world of golf, the Players' Championship takes centre stage. There's no event on the DP World Tour this week. The Joburg Open was the end of the international swing. The Asian swing starts next week in Singapore. No event in the LPGA Tour either, who have just finished their Asian swing. So it is all about the players. All eyes on Sawgrass. Fax, thank you so much for your time. And you're now making the drive up to Ponte Vedra Beach, is that right?
Early tomorrow morning, I'll get up at the crack of dawn. It's about a 4-hour drive or so up 95, the interstate here. And,
right.
I'll get to see the grounds all day tomorrow and Wednesday before we start our coverage. It seems to be 24 hours a day up there.
Yeah, they get their money's worth from you this week. Is the sun shining in Florida?
Not now. No, it's actually kind of overcast, but the rest of the week looks pretty good up there.
That's good. We've had sunshine here for the last week, but apparently we're about to get a cold snap again, so oh joy. Thank you as always for your time, Fax. Sorry not to see you this week, but I'll hopefully see you very soon. A huge thank you to Callum as well. He's off doing the media rounds as we speak. If you liked what you've heard or watched today, make sure you give us a follow on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And while there, why don't you leave us a review? Let us know what you think of the show. Thank you again to Callaway for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you again for your time, and do join us again this time next week.